Okay, I think I got this. Hey,
Hey,
Robert,
man.
finally good to see you, man. How's everything?
Hey, good, man. How are you doing?
I'm hanging in there, man. I was just telling the people live right now that like the last 2 days, I don't know. I was saying I don't know if anyone watches like the old videos. I had a blue background. Now I have a white background because I literally painted this entire office thing. And so I have gray on this side, everything else is all white because everything was so blue. And I was like, yo, it's kind of bothering me. So I finally got the paint in. It looks better. I love it. So now I'm just little by little putting the stuff back that I had when I in this room.
You like the white better?
hmm
Yeah.
Way better. Way better. It was just, oh my God. Actually, hold on. I could actually show it to you. Hold on. So wait, can I do selfie mode on here or not when I'm live? Oh, here it is.
Yeah, I've
I
never
mean the
done.
opposite, but this is what it looks like now. All this was entirely blue and it was annoying the crap out of me.
You
So
like a
I
clean,
finally,
you like a clean white wall.
yeah, and then I have gray here and I have my little TV here. And this is just stuff I have on the wall.
What are
And
all?
that too, my friend gave me that. He does a lot of calligraphy and stuff, so he gave me some of his pieces, and I was like, okay, cool, So that's what I
Oh,
have
nice.
so far.
That's like your studio, huh?
Yeah, because I have a 3 bedroom. There's me, my wife's room, then there's my son's room, and then there's this room. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna use it as a studio slash man cave slash office of some sort.
Nice.
So yeah.
And
Oh,
where are you? You're in Brooklyn, is that right? Are you?
oh no, I'm from Brooklyn, but I
Yeah.
actually live in Bayonne, New Jersey.
Oh, okay. Very cool.
Yes, I'm originally a Brooklynite though.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm from the East Coast. Originally, I was born in Charleston, but now I
I'm
live out on the West Coast in Reno. I think I prefer it out here on the West Coast side. Not to disparage the East Coast, but I do love the waves. I think better on the West Coast and the sunshine and the warmth. But
yeah.
yeah,
I think
you guys beat us with I think with foliage and trees and mountain ranges. You guys got the Appalachian over there. We have the Sierra Nevada, which is pretty good, but I have to take the Appalachian over the Sierra, I think. But
I agree. I mean, I don't mind the cold, but like I'd rather be like cool and pretty much I'd rather sweat than to freeze to death. Basically, I don't really like the cold as far as like to freeze. Like I don't I enjoy the weather, but to actually like embrace the cold like that, nah. I'd rather just be in a nice sun, like you said. Honestly, I've been to Chicago, I've been to Milwaukee, but that's pretty much it.
yeah,
And I've been to Puerto Rico, of course, but that doesn't really count, though, does
this
it?
doesn't count. They're
Oh
part of
man,
the United States, right? They're
I
a
get they're a Commonwealth. They're trying to
pseudo
make it a
part of it.
state, but yeah, they're trying to make it a state, but it's like they're like, I don't know if you want to do that. I don't know. It's like a lot of reasons as to why they don't want to be a state, but
Yeah,
it is what it is.
yeah, they can't vote, but they get like I think they get like a lot of benefits. Like they don't have to pay certain things because they're not like a state. Like, but I don't know. I don't know very much about that.
No, no, I get you. I get you. Yeah, man. So welcome. In this case, even though we're live, but this will be episode 2 of my podcast. So for those who are here, welcome. Thank you for joining me and Robert. It's been a long time since I've been live, so it's like I forgot so much has changed here on Instagram. And for those who are here, I just want to apologize for the weirdness that happened a couple of days ago. It's just I didn't know that when you tag people, now it sends them a message. I'm like, oh, okay, I didn't know it did that. So there's all these messages on my chat. And I'm like, oh, okay, what did I do wrong? And then Robert Kazi had told me, oh no, it's just they send it. That's why he doesn't tag people anymore. I was like, oh, whoops, I didn't know. I did not know.
I've never done one before ever, so if I mess up anything or if I
Nah,
log out or something, apologize
I
profusely.
saw It's all good. So, all right, so cool. So, welcome to the show. And I guess the first question I guess I want to ask, like, where does the inspiration behind your writing come from?
Oh gosh, I don't know. A lot of different places, right? I studied English in college, and I was always into poetry and poets. Ever since I was in like high school, I was reading. I was on to like kind of on to like poets in the same way that people are like, will get into certain bands when they were younger, and kind of obsess over them for a little while. I would do that with like poets and writers, and so I feel like I've always had that kind of like itch. And then yeah, studying it more in college, I think really helped. Going to Europe and seeing that culture and that history. And I feel like I just get a lot out of literature in general. Like if I could consider myself like religious in any way, I think it would be with the books that I read. So yeah, I think it's there in the words. I get something out of the words.
Oh, awesome, awesome. I guess okay. So tell me more about like what is the process when you're writing? Like, does it just come out on the fly, or is it something that you're just like, this is what's on my mind, and you write about it?
I think I don't know. It's probably a little bit of both. I mean, I'm sure you've had this. I feel like there's like a preliminary stage where you're gonna have these. They're not even like really formed ideas, right? They're like half ideas where they're like emotions or sensations, and so you just like kind of hammer away at that and just kind of you like vomit that out first and get that out of your system, and then you just go back in, and most of it is, I think, editing. Like I think most writing is going back and like fixing all of the garbage that you like put down on the page first because it didn't come out right and it doesn't exactly make sense. And so you like look at it on the page and you're like, okay, what does that actually mean? What am I trying to say? How do I want to like make that into a line? So yeah, I think that there's the first stage of just getting the idea down on the paper in its raw, rough, ugly form. And then there's like the rest of it, like 80% of it is fixing it, tweaking it. Like like every word, like paying attention to whether or not, a word is the right word. And then you do that and then you put it away and then you work on something else and then you come back to it and with new eyes and then you fix it. And I think that's like the majority of how I work on it. Although sometimes like you get those like flashes of brilliance where it all comes out right in one sitting, and but those are so rare. Yeah. What's your process like? I'd love to hear how you
Well, it's
do it.
interesting. So, it's interesting because when I was, oh my God, okay, I'm trying to think because I think what made me want to write, because I used to see my dad write a lot. Like he would isolate himself in his room and he would just write. I don't know what he was writing. And I remember one day I was just like going through his stuff because he wasn't home, and I was like, oh, what? Even though it was in Spanish, I didn't really understand what he was writing. But I'm like, he had like these stack of papers. It was craziness. And I'm like, man, he must have a lot in his mind for him to write this much stuff. And the thing is, my father was very to himself. He was never the kind of guy that would like really sit down, talk with you, especially like old school Puerto Rican culture. Like they're very like that. Like they don't really talk. They came from a time where they don't really talk about their problems. It's more like they're private and that's it. So I don't know the exact moment, but I can say there was a day I was in the cafeteria in junior high school, and I believe they were doing this thing where junior high school, they were doing this thing where they'll publish like their school book thing, and they had poetry and short stories, and I was reading them and I was just like, man, I want to write, but I don't know why I wanted to write. but it was something about the writing process that made me just grab a paper one day and I just started writing whatever my mind was, and I don't know if this happens to you, but I don't know if this is with everybody, but I know with me, when you first start writing, you just write stupid stuff. Like it's anything like powerful. It's just, you're just writing whatever stuff's coming out of your head. And then little by little, I would say once high school came for me, it was more like I started to expand my mind more because I had teachers that were older than I was. Well, obviously they're older than me, but they had an interesting way of speaking. I guess you can say that, because I had a few teachers that I would stay after class. My global history teacher and my English teacher, for example, when they were in like doing their teacher stuff, they were in bands, and they introduced me to bands like Led Zeppelin, Motley Crue, and then they also, I don't want to say Nirvana, but anything like before Nirvana, basically, like all those artists. And I don't know, it was something about the way they wrote that I just wanted to write. I want to write like that. How do you come up with words? Like, I don't know, I just had this thing where I just started writing, and I look back now compared to how I write today, and I'm just like, wow, I've really come a long way. But the process, it's like I could be thinking about nothing, and then for some reason I'll just come up with something off the top of my head, and then I'll look back, I'm like, okay, wait, I don't even know what this means. I don't even understand what I wrote. And sometimes the things I write, it's kind of scary sometimes, because it's like, okay, where is this direction going? Like, I'm the kind of guy, like, I'll look at something and I'll dissect it. And then I would be like, wait, what part of my brain did this come from? And how did this come this way? Like, how did I come up with these words to put together? And does it make sense? I don't know. But to me, even though it's deep, but it doesn't make sense to me. But yeah, I like it. So I don't know. It's like, I guess that's the best way to describe it. It just, like, I'll look at something and then out of nowhere, I'll just come out of nowhere, just like, I don't know, just start writing stuff.
Yeah,
but I guess
isn't that weird that you don't like? It's almost like it's not you, it's something else. Like, I think that's why back in the day they used to talk about like a muse, how poets and writers used to get their ideas not from themselves. Like, they didn't self-generate them. They would say that they got it from a muse. So like some other force that you have to like barter with, or like offer sacrifices to like get something from them. And a lot of the time that seems like true psychologically, because you don't know where they come from. You don't know where your ideas come from. And when you put them down on the paper, sometimes they don't like look like they're yours, or it doesn't seem like that would be something that you would think about. Right. So I like that idea of like a muse, of like you're getting it from somewhere else, from somewhere outside. It's not outside, it's in your head, but it feels like it is outside sometimes. And I think when you conceptualize it like that, it maybe helps the writing process, because you can kind of let yourself go and be like, okay, like I'm going to let it come to me instead of like trying to think about it. Subconscious. I've called it like the preconscious before. It's like the stuff that's like just underneath like the level of like when you're conscious and you can actually like apprehend it. But yeah, it's really weird. I have no idea where they come from a lot of the time, and you just kind of hope that they do come to you, and that you can make something out of them.
Yeah. Wait, Mar plus 3 says, I feel the poetry process is a self-exploration, uncovering layers. Yeah, I think
Marianne.
So.
Hey, Marianne.
Hello, Marianne. But yeah, I think so too. What's funny? I always wondered, like, some people say, maybe you had a past life and stuff. So I wonder if I had a past life, is this what my past life went through? And why did it go through this kind of thing? Or like, is this the way he or she used to think? Like, yeah. Sometimes I think about that sometimes. Like, wait, where did this come from?
Yeah. Do you believe in like other past lives, or? or
So
it just feels like that?
so with me it's weird because so I'm a born again Christian, but like I understand that, like even though I'm supposed to focus on just Jesus and that's it, but I'm very open minded to a point where like I understand that, not everybody believes in it. And I'm the kind of person like I don't mind having a conversation with you about whether you believe it or not, or whether you follow a religion or not. There are some Christians in the faith that don't agree with how I think and stuff like that. But that's it is what it is. I understand that not everyone's gonna agree with everything I say, and I get all that. But with me, like I just don't like basically the main principles, biblical principles of Jesus. Obviously I don't mess with that. I don't touch that. As far as like I don't question that. If that's what it says, that's it. But then there's other stuff that I'm like, okay, yeah, I like to question it. I like to question that because it's a good conversation starter. I feel like if we don't question things we don't understand, or we don't really think outside the box just so we can get a clearer understanding of things in life, then I just don't see why, like what sense does everything make then? You know what I'm saying? Because the thing is, I know people who are very into their religion and then they refuse to let anything that outside of their surroundings, how do I explain that? Like they refuse to let anything be open-minded to them. They rather just be closed-minded and that's it, and this is what it is. Like I understand the whole firm believeness, but you gotta have enough discernment to understand. Okay, but you need to be up to date with what's going on too, and how does that align with each other some way, some form? How do you deal with it? How do you handle it? Stuff like that. I think that's what's missing a lot these days. But I don't know. That's just my opinion. And then there's this other part of me that feels like I feel like we could have had a past life somewhere, some way, and I don't know. Like I always wonder, like. I don't think something just came out of nothing and that's it. You know what I'm saying? I don't know if that makes sense, what I said.
Yeah, Plato, he had this idea that, we had like a life before we were born, and when we learn something, we gain knowledge that's actually just like us remembering something that we already knew, like from a previous life. So I feel like that idea goes back, I used to always think of it as like an Eastern kind of thinking, but it's in Plato too, and he talks about it. And I think it's an interesting maybe thought experiment or like mindset to get yourself in, because it generates maybe some like spooky kind of thinking, kind of like an out of body and existential like framework. Maybe lets you think thoughts that you wouldn't have otherwise thought of without that premise.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if I believe in that or not. I think I'm pretty agnostic when it comes to any of that stuff, but I like using them as like thought exercises. Yeah.
No, it makes sense. All right, so I'm having an issue with the chat. How do I see the chat? I notice before I used to be able to just tap it and then you can see it. Now I can't really. Can somebody help me out here? No, so I guess I want to know if anyone has questions or not. But so I was gonna ask too. I guess do you want to read a piece of yours to give an example of how you write and stuff like that?
Sure. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I could read something. Let me see if I can find a good one. What's the one that I really like? What's that?
No, I was saying hello to people that was just coming in.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I really like this one. And this is one of those ones that like just came out, I think like perfect one night when I was like studying, I was learning about this term called like modus vivendi. Uh, like sometimes a lot of the way that I'll generate ideas is I'll just like, I'll usually be studying a subject or having an idea that I'm pursuing, a topic that I'm really interested in, and sometimes it's a big topic. Like I wrote a whole book about a guy called Bodhidharma, who was this medieval monk who went from India to China, and I spent like a whole year like studying like Indian literature and Chinese literature, and other times I'm just like I'll find like a phrase online that I'm really interested in, and then it'll help me generate an idea, or I'll have something that I want to say about it. And one of them was I was looking up this term called modus vivendi, which is Latin for like a way of life or a way of living, and it was used, I think at the end of like the Napoleonic Wars as a way of like kind of letting things be after a war, and so that like reading about that has made me write this poem, and so this one's called Modus Vivendi. It says, "Let's treat everybody like they're their own country. I will be the nation of Robert Stan, monarchy. My people will think of their king as a philosopher who will extort from them all their hard labor. With other countries, we shall maintain relations as a delegate in the House of an United Nations. We shall voice our thoughts as the concerns of a people proud in character, sober in the law, and spiritual in the convictions of fellowship and camaraderie. And we shall recognize our neighbors, our boundaries north and west, south and east, where their peoples too are like tapestries of intersecting history, made new every third generation, in revolution for some cause dear to their hearts, or in a duty upholding their laws. We shall deal with one another most diplomatically, exchanging ambassadors, erecting our embassy, imparting gifts of ancestral sentiment, earthenware from my dynasty, and from you a statue for my square. We shall learn from each other as one studies a culture, admiring its milestones, its monuments that endure great upheavals, achievements recorded in annals. We shall entertain customs and open new channels, trade in our mutual prosperity, swap beloved recipes, perhaps even war shamefully, and spread disease. Perhaps we may rise up out of arrogance or injury, not knowing ourselves or who we would like to be. Perhaps we will tear ourselves apart in civil war, and fleeing destruction overstep a shared border. Would you offer shelter then, impoverished as we are, or with diffidence and austerity review us from afar? Would you posture and prevaricate your dismissal, maintaining both positions, official and unofficial? Or would you come to find your people and mine, our modus vivendi, has circumscribed another line around us both, that we are really half of each other, living under the same roof, without another."
Wow. Wow, that's deep. You know, it's funny too, like, because the way you write, like, you tell a story, but it's not you to say, hey, I went to the park. No, you're saying, I went here because, whatever your reasons are, but then, like, but you're describing it in a way that's like a whole, like, okay, like, wow, that is, what's funny? You know what I got at this too? I thought about, as you're reading that, I was thinking about Allen Ginsberg, the Beat Generation, because he was the kind of person that will go to different places, like rallies and stuff like that, and he will write about what was going on, and he will go asking around other people to see what they felt about the situation, and he will write about it. And as I'm hearing that, I think about Allen Ginsberg in it as well.
Yeah, I could definitely pick up that kind of voice too. That kind of like, in that one, it's like like a we the people kind of voice, right? Like he's writing not just about himself or with himself as the narrator, but it seems like it's a collective kind of voice, right? Like a voice. It sounds cliche, but like a voice of like a generation. But he definitely
Yeah.
when I read his writing, it seems like he's talking in the voice of a large group of people who have certain concerns and a certain way of looking at the world, uh, and yeah, I think that's what I was trying to do here too, is to imagine yourself as a nation, of a multitude of people existing within you, and you're fighting yourself, and then you might be fighting yourself one day and in civil war and conflict with yourself one day, and then the next you're in conflict with another nation or somebody else, and they're a collection of all these different ideas and impulses and emotions too, you know. Um,
Wow. Robert Kazi says he loves the question lines, he said.
oh, thanks, Robert. Yeah. Uh, yeah, they're. I think they kind of drive the poem forward. I didn't even realize when I was writing it too, that it was like a rhyming couplet kind of poem. I think I got like 5 or 6 lines in, and then I realized that I was rhyming each line, and I didn't even intend to. And then I was like, all right, well, I guess it's got to be like a rhyming couplet thing now. And that was the challenge as I worked my way through it, and I found that really entertaining to write, and it all came out like that in like one night. So I was pretty happy with that one, which like never happens.
Wow, that's phenomenal, bro. I love that. I love when something just comes on the fly like that, and then you're just like, I had a piece like that where I wrote like, I'm gonna say it was exactly like 7 pages long, but it was like on a piece of paper, and then I had to. My friend got mad because she didn't have that much paper left on her printer, so I just started grabbing paper printer because she got knocked out, and I'm just writing. And then I realized I thought I was okay. I'm tired to go. And then my friend's like, well, "Okay, what the hell happened to my?" Because I basically took all her printer paper, and I was like, "I am so sorry." I told her what happened. She's like, "You're buying me a rim of paper. I'm just letting you know right now." I'm like, "Okay, yes, I'll go to Staples. I'll get you a whole. I don't know if they call them a reef. What do they call that?
A ream of paper.
Ream of paper." Yeah, I was like, "Okay, I'll buy you a ream of paper. Like, we're fine." It was like $20, but whatever. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
But
you should treat everything like a writing surface that you can use. Like I'll have sticky notes and notebooks and books themselves, like anything you can write in. My phone's been really helpful with that, though. Now that I've gotten notes and I've gotten a better phone, but yeah, it's just like so much of what you write is garbage, I think. But if you just write enough of it, eventually you can pull like gems out of that, like a line here or there. Yeah, you find like a sticky note with a couple of lines that you like, and then you can use them somewhere, and then you build like a Frankenstein's monster of a poem together, and somehow it sounds good.
I love when the process. I love when the process is like that. That's times I've looked at certain like because I have a lot of free writing on my like Google Drive. I everything I had on a computer and stuff. I transferred onto a Google Drive, whatever. But I still have like actual pieces of paper. This times I'll look at something. I'm like, ooh, I like this sentence. Let me use this and let me see where I can go from there. Or I'll take, let's say, 6 different free writes, and I said, okay, I like this line, I like this line, I like this line, I like this line. Let me put this on. Okay, there you go. There's one poem right there. And it became something from different places. Like I love that process, you know.
Yeah, it's awesome, and you know, I think that's something you can do in poetry that maybe you can't do in other forms of writing, because in poetry there's this inherent sense of like ellipsis, like because each line you can think of as its own thought or having its own intention, and so you can put a couple of lines together that seem disjointed, but when you put them together and you're reading poetry and you know you're reading poetry, your mind is going to try and connect them in some way, and so the audience participates in the space between the lines that you write. And so you can write 2 or 3 lines that did not come from the same writing session. They come from different writing sessions, but you put them together, and the reader's mind can put the pieces together and make sense of it somehow in a way that they wouldn't if they were reading like prose, because in prose you have a sense of like linearity, that each sentence is supposed to connect logically to the next sentence so that it builds up to a complete idea. But that doesn't always have to be the case in poetry. You can kind of work with the form of poetry, which is I think it works a lot with this idea of like ellipsis, which is to like leave something out or unsaid. And that's actually we get like the compression and the speed of poetry.
Okay. So, because I have a question because you are a teacher, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's what you do.
Yeah, I teach English, in journalism.
Okay. Oh, that's dope. That's awesome. Okay, I have a teacher question, I guess, is my question. Okay, I just no. So when it came to poetry or writing, right? Because every English teacher I've had, I've heard different things, and I'm like, okay, I don't know what the real answer is to this, so I'm gonna try to ask this question as best as I can. So when it comes to poetry, right? Is there or is there not a right and wrong way to write poetry? I guess is my question. And the reason why I ask this question is because, like, because I was always taught, like, I guess in junior high school when it came, because every poem that they presented in class, whatever, at least from school, whatever, it was always stanza, right? But then when I read pieces like Allen Ginsberg, all his pieces are not always like that. They're like these long sentences with comma. Sometimes he doesn't even have a period on it. And I'm like, and then there's these, like you say, you talking about you talking about prose, you were talking about muse, stuff like that. Like, I'll be honest with you, I don't know these terms. Like, when I write, I just write, and I just set it up, according to what the thought should be. Okay, this is one particular thought. Okay, that should be a stanza. The next stanza is a different thought. But sometimes it won't be a whole paragraph. It would be like 3 lines. Okay, that's one stanza or something. And then the next stanza, it's a different thought. It'll be 4 or 5 lines or something. But it's like one sentence, but in the structure of like 3 lines or something like that. And I see a lot of people write like that. Some people write it differently. Sometimes people write it in the form of a paragraph that looks like a story, but it's really a poem. And so and that's why I asked this question.
Yeah.
I spent a lot.
Yeah, I mean, it's a tough question. Is there a right way to write poetry? I would say like if I would tell my students, there's no right way to write poetry. I think poetry is, poetry is a medium of writing. It's a type of writing that you do, and writing is, I think, intimately connected with thought. Like, I don't think that there's a difference between writing and thought. I think it's an extension of thought. And so there is really no wrong way to like write your thoughts down. Like, and I think that's how people talk about poetry, as like a form of expression for your thoughts. And I think when you think about it like that, then yeah, you can take there is no form. The form kind of disappears, and it's however you can get your thoughts down in a way that makes sense to you and that you find beautiful or useful to you. I would say that there is like a tradition of poetry, though, and the tradition is kind of the forming of thought to certain patterns of sound and sense. And so there is like a structure that's imposed on the thought. And I think those are kind of the rules that you learn in poetry. And in certain eras in the history of poetry, there have been like certain ways of writing poems. Maybe, you would write in stanzas, or you would write with a meter. And that was kind of how you constructed the poem. And then, people play with those forms, and then eventually they break them apart and they mess with those rules. So I think if you think about writing as just an extension of thinking, then there's no real right way to write a poem. But I think that there is a tradition of poetry that is useful to use, and that has to do with sound and with sense. And so the ordering of the the rhythm of the words, the weight of the words, and then like the way that you organize them into lines. Like I think that there is a tradition there that you can learn from, and that it is useful if you study poetry, if you want to write poetry like seriously. Then yeah, I think that there is a tradition that you can learn from. But you can write poems however you want, and I think that that's fine too, you know?
Right. Okay, good. Because okay, that's like the realest answer I've ever had. So thank you for that. Because it's like oh my God, I've had teachers that would say like, oh no, but it should always be this way. And I'm just like, otherwise it's not a poem. It's just a bunch of thoughts. And I'm just like, okay, but like, so I shouldn't call my stuff poems, like, and that's why it gets so like I guess that's when a situation like that gets so diluted because I'm just like, wait a second. So if it's not a poem, what is it? A thought? It's just a free verse? Like what? Like what I'm saying? Like as far as the terms, like I don't know the terms that well, so I just write accordingly to how my mind processes the thought, and I just write it how I guess my hands. I don't know if that makes sense. Like my hands just wherever it goes, that's how I write. If that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've tried out a bunch of different ways. I think as just exercises in writing poetry is, a line for me. Sometimes when I'm writing a poem, will be like an entire thought, and I'll be like, I'll have a complete thought. Like in the poem I read, it starts, "Let's treat everybody like they're their own country." So it's a complete sentence and it's a complete thought too. And so that's the mode in which I wanted to write the poem in, because that was maybe the first line that came to me was, "Let's treat everybody like they're their own country." And it came out like that. And so that's the whole complete first line. And so then for the next lines, like that's the rule maybe that I have established for this poem. And so then the next lines are going to be like all complete thoughts too. And so that's kind of how the poem works. And there's some enjambment when the thought like is extra long, like double long, then I'll enjam it and go on to the second line. And so maybe the thought will be like 2 lines long. I don't think it gets longer than 2 lines in the poem. But so in the process of creating it, I've created the rules for that poem. And the rule is something like I want my line to be as long as my thought. But there's other times where I've written, I've had a thought and it's very complex and it's compressed and it's so complex that I need to break it up, the thought, into like 2 or 3 lines. And then I might break it up in terms of like, I don't know, a clause or a phrase, because maybe the phrase is so important that it needs its own line, or it's so vital to understanding that it needs its own line. So I'll break the thought up based on these phrases that I think are important. And so it's like a way of ordering your thoughts on the page. And that's why I think it looks different than prose. If poetry is anything that separates it from prose, it's like the fact that you have these line breaks. And so they mean something and you can use them and mess around with them. And that's maybe one way of that I write a poem, or that I think about writing when I'm in the process of it.
Okay, that makes sense. And Robert says, I have yet to follow a consistent rule of poetry while writing. I think that's what this
Robert,
too.
you should try it, man. You should try. You should take a try a form. I love the sonnet. Like I've been obsessed with the sonnet for a long time, and I feel like that's like almost like the perfect form of poetry for at least for English. Like I think it might be different for other languages, but I think that the reason that it's so popular in English is because it's a great form to tell us a short little story or a short little thought in like 14 lines. And
right. Okay. So since because now you brought it up now, so it's great. So there's different. I guess so. Sonnet, that's considered a style, right? If I'm not mistaken, that's considered a style of poetry.
A sonnet, I think I would call like a poetic form. It's like a form.
Okay, I have written a sonnet with high roll. Yeah, I know about that. Robert Kazi, yeah. Hyro, yeah, he's very big on that. He writes like surrealism and stuff. That's like his genre of writing and painting and stuff like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know Jero. How do you say Jero or Gyro?
Hyro. He's from
Hyro.
Spain.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I know him. I like his art, his paintings. He does really good paintings. Yeah,
Yeah,
and
I
I know
found
he's
him
into
by
like
accident.
surrealism. I listened to
Yeah,
a
I
little bit
found him
of
by accident.
I listened to a little bit of your podcast. You did an episode with him, I think, and I listened to a little bit of that a couple of days ago.
Okay. Thank you. But yeah, that was from like the second. Yeah, it's like this is like my third season. I mean, honestly, I don't know where it's gonna go. I just do it for fun. I love. Like I always told Robert Kazi and everybody else, when I do this, it's just because I feel like there's a lot of stories that need to be told, and I feel like not everybody in this life has the opportunity to do so. So I figure, you know what, let me do this just so we can tell stories, and then let's say when we're older, we can look back, we're like, wow, it's pretty cool because I remember that, you know, because it's like I want to create memories. I want people to hear stories, if that makes sense. You know, like kind of like what we're doing right now. You know, because there are things that people don't talk about, and it's not about oh yeah, like famous or whatever. It's just I just do this for fun because I just love to have conversations with people, and it's like this is the perfect way for me to interact and like because like think about it, like in biblical times, right, they always wrote things down and then they eventually published it and they eventually, you know, they get passed on and stuff like that. But now podcasting is such a big thing, like, you know, this is freaking cool, you know. So that's why I love to do this because it's just fun to do, you know.
Yeah, I think podcasting it's been a huge help for me, just like listening to it, because I feel like you could listening to a conversation is I think it opens your mind up in a way that maybe like you can't do just by thinking about something yourself. And so having that dialogue with somebody, and nowadays you can listen to a podcast with anybody on any subject and learn something new and hear a different voice give a different opinion, and I feel like we need more of that. I feel like we don't have a lot of like poetry podcasts. You know, I feel poetry is not big or in favor or in vogue nowadays, and I feel like the more power to you for picking that subject, and I feel like it still has something to offer people. I often wonder why like poetry is not as popular as maybe it used to be, or because it seems like it'd be like the perfect form in this kind of a society we live in, that it's very like wants everything in like bite-sized formats or easily consumable pieces. Feels like you would rather want to read a poem than like read a whole novel, you know. That doesn't seem to be
Yeah.
the case, and I kind of sometimes I wonder why that is.
Yeah, I wonder that too. I remember I used to. It's been a long time, but there was a guy I saw to hear, Joe Steele, and I think he was the one that brought me into this whole podcast thing because he was. I don't know if he still does it, but I remember he was doing it. I think he was the first one in the community to try to do it, and then I kind of just jumped on the bandwagon with him. Like, oh yeah, I'll do one too. And honestly, there was no. At the beginning, there was no exact structure exactly because when I first did this, I originally had a community page. So I never really, I don't think I've ever told anyone the story, but for those who have followed me from the beginning, my original poetry page was called Jam Them Down, and the reason why it was called that because the word jam, that's actually my initials, Juan Andres Morales, and I don't know, instead of write them down, I just put Jam Them Down just to be fancy because everybody had these cool fancy names. And then somehow the more I interacted with people, there was all these community pages, but as there were these community pages, there was also sub-community pages that were no longer around. In the goodness, I have to keep it real. There's also some weirdness that happens behind the scenes that, a lot of people don't know about. Is what it is. And I think me coming into in the middle of whenever it was created, it was like, oh man, all these teachers are leaving. Oh, that sucks. And then eventually I ended up finding out what happened, whatever. I said, and I just got inspired. I said, no, we can't stop this. And then that's why I created that I turned my poetry page into a community page, and then eventually it changed from Jam Them Down to Ink Sessions Live, and I actually had a whole team, and during that time, the podcast. So I would like, because you couldn't download the episodes, and the lives at the time wouldn't stay on after you record it. It would be just 24 hours, and then the live was gone. Like, that's how it used to be originally. So I would do this thing where I'm plugging my computer onto the device, my phone onto the device, record the audio, extract the audio, and then I will upload it onto the podcast. And then once they started doing this thing, okay, now you can save the lives, then I kind of put the podcast on hold, and then the community page eventually dissolved, because whatever, certain members had like their own personal stuff they had to deal with. And then I said, you know what, I wouldn't mind. So I went back into the podcasting, but I no longer have a community page. It's a lot of work, honestly, to have like a community page and to have a team and to really be consistent on it. Because it's like, you got to really be on top of people. Hey, don't forget to post this or to feature this. And it's like, yeah, I'll just stick to the podcasting. So then I started a season 2, then I started a season 3 and all this other stuff. And yeah, and then I had like a hiatus, came back, had another hiatus, and now I'm just coming back now to doing this. It's just one of those things, like, I guess I had to, as far as the podcasting, as far as like community page, as far as just poetry in general, I had to find myself where I could fit in, even though I feel what's the word? Even though I try, not fit in, but more like how I can stand out in a way that, okay, I'm different from everything and everyone else, but we're all in this together kind of thing. I don't know if that last sentence made sense, but that's pretty much how this whole podcast.
You're trying to find your niche, is like you're trying to find your niche, your pocket, yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So it was such a weird process, though, because I think when 2020 came in with the coronavirus, and just because a lot of things changed too. That's another thing that took into effect. A lot of people were doing more lives, more on that time because of the lockdown, and we really could not do nothing. And then finally, when little by little the things were restricted, when restrictions were off, then it was like, okay, we're still doing this, but it's not as much as it used to be, because it was like every day everyone was going live. Like that's, and everybody, me, Joe Steele, and we took advantage of that. I said, oh, hey, let's do lives too, and let's record podcasting, because that's all I was doing for a while. And then again, I had a whole hiatus and then came back and stuff like that. But just me coming back this time around, yeah, like you said, I think I found my niche. Like, I don't really know these terms like that. Yeah, I found my niche, or I'm finding my niche, I'm finding my pocket, I guess you could say. And I'm exploring other avenues as well, but it's fun. I love the fact that we can do this, record this, and just have it. It's just a good thing to have. It's a good resource to have.
There's a lot of content out there too for podcasting. I feel like if you're talking about poets on Instagram, there are a lot of, I think there's a lot of good poetry that's on Instagram. Like, there's a lot of bad stuff too, and that it could even be its own content as well. But there is a lot of content out there, I think, that's maybe going unused or unrecognized or unnoticed, and so I feel like there's the potential there, to kind of mine the platform for that kind of stuff. So I feel like that's a great idea to do like a poetry podcast on here.
Yeah, because I know there's other ones that I discovered. I mean, it looked like they were even there before me and Joe, but it wasn't really known like that. Unless like, I would find it by accident or something. But I don't know. That's what I'm saying. Like, I'm still trying to understand the whole podcasting game, if that makes sense. So I'm still trying to trying to understand how to navigate, I guess. I don't know if that's the correct word. I don't know if that's the word I'm looking for. But yeah, it's interesting, because now I find little things, but the following, like I said, it's not a lot and it's not as popular, but it should be. I mean, I don't want to be the only person doing it. I want be the one that inspires people to want to do their own. And then there's like a big audience of poetry section of podcasting. I feel like, if there's not a lot of it, and I feel like we should have more. I feel like we should have different alternatives because it's good. It's good to have that. I mean, there's not a lot. I know there's Button Poetry. They have somewhat of a podcast. I think Rattle has something, but it's more like a YouTube-ish live than it is a podcast. But
I think the problem is like curation, like finding the good stuff, because there's so much poetry out there. Like there's an immense amount. Like everybody who has written anything has probably written a poem, and so there's so much out there to wade through. And I think like if somebody could have a podcast that could find the good stuff, like the gems, and then present it and build up that credibility that like when you listen to them, that they're going to be talking about interesting poets and interesting poems. They'd be. I think that's a way to build a base, is to know that, to have this kind of authority that people come to you for reading good poetry or for hearing good poetry.
Right, yeah. I agree with you on that one, man, for real. I definitely feel like poetry is very underrated, in my opinion. And we need to...
Yeah, why do you think that is?
I don't know. I always wonder. I mean, I don't know if there's not enough people interested enough to... I don't know. I always wonder that. Because poetry comes in different shapes and forms, even in music, too. Like, even though it's a beat, it's a sound, and they have instruments and stuff like that. But in some way, whether it's hip hop or whether it's just music, just rock music or whatever. But that's still, in a way, it's kind of a form of poetry. It's just they're singing, not really saying the words. But I mean, but I don't know. I don't know. That is something I always I always wondered that same thing, to be honest with you.
Yeah. I've thought about it too, and I think there's probably a few different reasons. I think two people do turn to music because there is a connection between music and poetry, and lyrics and poetry. Although I do think that they are separate. They can do different things. I think there's this sense that people get that they're not sure if they're going to get anything out of poetry, because poetry has become so subjective, and so idiosyncratic, that it's hard for people, I think, to connect with a poem because they don't understand. Maybe somebody is just writing down whatever's coming into their head, their thoughts, and they write a poem and then they put it out there, and somebody else has to interpret it or try to translate it in their mind, and so there's this disconnect where, and I feel this too sometimes, like when I read some poetry, I'll lose interest or I'll lose focus if I can't find that connection with the poem. It might mean something to the person who's writing it, but if they're not communicating to me with some level of standard set of thoughts and images and metaphors, then it's very hard to connect with them. And I feel like a lot of people feel that when they think of poetry, they think, oh, it's too abstract, or it's too it's too subjective, and I'm not going to get anything out of it when I read it. And I feel like that's a big problem. In the same way of you think about visual arts nowadays, people, I think, look down on visual arts. They go to museums and stuff or art galleries, and they see this art and they're like, I don't understand what that means, because it's just splashes of color, or it's just it's kind of incomprehensible, and they go, I don't know what it means, and so then they just ignore it. And I feel like that's a lot of poetry, is people read it and they go, I don't know what that means, and then they move on from it. And so I feel like if poetry maybe like, I don't know, I think like people would read it more if they thought that they got something out of it or they were going to get something out of it. And I've had that mindset when I try to write. I'm like, okay, if you read one of my poems, then I feel like you're going to understand it at least on a basic level, because it is mostly I'm writing in like narrative or dramatic poetry. So there's like a story there, and so you can lock on or you can grab onto the story, and so it's like something rather than just like stream of consciousness. Like whatever comes to your mind in whatever form it comes to. I think that can be off-putting for a lot of people. And then another I think maybe problem is that it's maybe too like diary-ish. Like it's people's diary entries of how they feel. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but people read stuff because they want to be entertained and they want to find something interesting, and they want to feel like they're going to get something out of it. And a lot of the stuff that's I write in my diary is not very interesting to anybody but me, and so I try to like keep it in my diary. And when I'm writing a poem, I'm like, okay, what do I think is going to be interesting for somebody and me? Like I'm always included in that, but also what's going to be interesting to somebody else, an interesting story, an interesting like anecdote, an interesting idea. And I think like if people came to it with the idea like they're going to get something out of it and they're going to get something out of it like the same way that they would watch a movie or read a book, then I think that poetry would like climb back up into people's like good graces, and they'd be more willing to read it,
Yeah, that wow. I guess the way you broke that down was I think that's exactly what it is. I think what it comes down to, like you said, if there's a sense of we're gonna get something out of it, then hopefully it's interesting enough where I can get something out of it in some shape form. That actually makes sense. Actually, I think other than that, I mean, not really much I can say, but I definitely agree with that for sure, 100%. But
because I think you can read. Poems for the beautiful words that somebody comes up with, or the beautiful maybe like string of words that somebody comes up with. But if that's all it is, then I think people lose interest like quickly, because there is so much good art out there nowadays. Like you have to I think you have to rise to an occasion to give people something that is really they find valuable to themselves. And I think poetry can do that because you can tell a whole story in like a few lines. And you can do it so well that it leaves a mark on people and that they go, wow. And then they can think about it back to it and they can think about those lines and they can hold those words inside of them because there aren't very many of them. You can write a short poem that sticks with somebody and they'll remember the words, in a way that they wouldn't remember like words or phrases from a book or a novel. So I think the potential is there.
Yeah, Robert Kazi says it has to be memorable and authentic and show some heart and relatability. Yeah, that makes sense. I definitely agree with that in a way. It's like yes and no. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think authentic. Any art should be like genuine, and I think that's what people really pick up on in art is when they feel like something's genuine and unique, or like well crafted too. I think people like I think the best is when they're all in combination. Something's genuine, so it's like heartfelt, and that usually means that it's relatable. Because anything genuine, I think people can relate to what's genuine. but also something that's well crafted. You know, like just think of the last like really good movie that you've seen that was just so well put together, and the story was told so well. Like there's a craft involved in that, and I think there's a craft in every art that we practice. I think that there's a craft in poetry too, and it's there for us to like use and do good, interesting things with.
Yeah. No, pacing is key as well, in my opinion. That's what Robert Kazi said.
Pacing of the story, you mean?
Yeah, is that what you mean, or just in general? If you mean in general, yeah, I see what you said.
Pacing, like, yeah, you don't want to go too fast. You don't want to go too slow either. You want to find the right pace for your thoughts to walk around in.
Like, okay, fine. Like for example, when like back in the 60s, like you see how poetry at that time was so different, and it was so like it was big at one point. I like to believe, during Allen Ginsberg time, because he used it to voice something that he didn't agree with. Because before his time, it was the silent generation. It was the okay, we don't talk about that kind of stuff. I believe it was, I don't know if it was post World War II or post Vietnam. I always mix that up, but like I know it was after war. I don't know which war it was, but it was just the whole, okay, this is the way we structured our students to learn about things. And Allen Ginsberg was like, we could talk about this too. Like, and it was like, no, like, what are you doing? And, he's a very countercultural person. And I like to think at that time, that, poetry did reach some kind of a high at one point where he used that to his ability. I guess he used that as a, what's the word I'm looking for? Like he used that as a strategy to voice the things that he disagreed with. He was very countercultural. He just wanted to express the fact that, basically saying, if we don't do this, or if we think differently about a certain thing, then maybe it can get better or it can get worse. Like that's the way he spoke. And I think at that time he was very like, you read, let's say that piece Howl right now, like, okay, yeah, that's cool. You read that back in the day, that was like, no, why is he writing like that? No, like that's very controversial at the time, and it just makes you think. Like, I feel like we can do. I mean, I don't want to be controversial either, but you know what I mean. Like, I feel like we could do something where poetry can be up and high again, if that makes sense. I don't know if high is the right word, but we can make it big again, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it was definitely a moment. I think that part of the reason that they were so popular is because they were in like a group and they were part of a cultural moment. There was a countercultural moment, and Howl, I think, it was popular because like it kind of broke a lot of the traditional rules of poetry, and it was like crass and it was raw, and I'm sure like the trial that it had helped its the publicity that it got from the trial helped its like status and reputation, because it was this like this outrageous, like obscene poem, but I think that there was some genuine sentiment behind why he wrote it. I mean, I like the sentiment of the poem. I love some of Ginsberg's stuff when he reads it. When I read it on the paper itself, it doesn't move me as much, I think, as when I hear him read it and I can hear his voice in it, and I get that like kind of like he's very like. I mean, he's howling when he's reading it. Like, it seems like it's a really like a cry from his soul about all of these maybe injustices that he sees in the world, and he's put it into this form. And he does. I mean, he does. I don't think that it's structurally or like in its form or its structure. I don't think it's like that interesting. But I think I love the like metaphor he has of like that he uses of mammon. Like he invokes all of these old biblical kinds of gods, and I think that's something that poetry can do, or they can draw from too, is this old like body of work, these old images that existed in poetry, in oral poetry back in the day, and I think that's what he does, and he does it very well. Um, but yeah, I think poetry is it's using those like metaphors on like a very like kind of the most I don't want to say it. I think that's like one of its primary functions is to use these is to play around with metaphor and to find the right metaphor image to present its idea. And Howell does that. Like it does use these old biblical metaphors, but in like with a modern sensibility and a modern issue that it's dealing with. And I think that that's what it does maybe well. And that's what's maybe its lasting value too.
Wow. Yeah. And I think, yeah, that's exactly what it is. So I had a question, and I hate when I forget my thought. Damn, I was going to ask another
I
question.
was rambling too, so
No,
I
it's fine.
apologize
No,
for
because
forgetting it.
I love to just listen, and it's like, wow, like it's so intriguing because again, like how one conversation could turn into this whole thing is so. So as far as Allen Ginsberg's concerned, yeah, everything you said about him was 100%. Yes, and I think that's what it is too. Now I feel like the value of those things, I think it's been lost, in so many ways. It's like how do we get back to that? If it's even possible, And like I said, I'm not trying to be like, yeah, I'm gonna get arrested because I said something obscene. No, I'm not like that either. But it's like, I want to have some kind of lasting impact. Something that when they hear it, when yeah, like we're poets, we write a lot, but we have stories to tell too. And say, hey, you can check out this guy, you can check out this guy, see where he gets his inspiration from. Oh, that's why he does that. Okay. But like you said, it's like when you're reading something on a piece of paper, it doesn't move you in opposed to like when you actually hear him saying it. There we go. Thank you. Okay. So that's the thing too, because when I read the poem the first time, I'm like, okay, this is a really long poem. And these are words, I don't know a lot of these words he used. And I said, let me see if he ever recited them somewhere or like if there's like anywhere where, and then on Spotify, it just happens to have like an album of him pretty much reciting the entire book. But it's like because he has a book called Howl and then other poems, and they happen to have that on Spotify. So, okay, now I can read along. And as I'm reading along and he's saying it, I felt like I was there and I'm watching him recite his poem. And I think that's why I feel like having a podcast and anything with poetry related in that subject should be the reason why we should do this more.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a great performer. I've listened to his stuff on YouTube, and you can find some good stuff. There's this great poem that he reads. I can't remember the title, but it's like a poem about him, about like an acid trip he did or a mushroom trip or something that he did. And I've like never heard anybody describe like a hallucinogenic trip quite in the same way that he does, and he does it so well. And it was one of the best, I think, readings that I've ever heard from him. And he tells the whole story of how he entered this world after taking the stuff, and the kinds of thoughts that he had there, and this overwhelming feeling of like love and stuff, and yeah, when he performs it, he like has like just an excellent like narrator's voice, and it feels like he's telling you a story, and you believe, you're willing to go with him wherever it is that he takes you because you trust in his kind of authorial voice that he has. I think he's like an excellent performer.
No, I definitely agree with you on that. And like you said, the whole thing of him describing, yeah, like everything he talks about in a lot of his pieces that I've read, that I've heard him talk about, it's very descriptive. It's not just, okay, the moon was white. It's more like it was white like snow, or as the radiant. Like he just goes into this whole thing, and I'm just like, that's deep. Like that's really deep. And like it's interesting, like I said, like we said before, it's just like he did these things so well that's like, wow, it's funny too, like I only knew about this Beat Generation thing because I had a episode with this professor from oh my god, what college did he go to? Chicago. Oh my god, I forgot the name of the school, but he's the one. His name is Tony Trigilio. He's the one that got me into this. We did like a interview, and we did like a thing where, okay, we're gonna read people's poems from the community, but it's related to the Beat Generation. But this particular live we did was interesting because Allen Ginsberg had a friend named Elise Cowan, which a lot of people don't know of her because she had committed suicide. Long story short, what ended up happening was when I know she was in love with him, but like he didn't really feel that way about her, and I know he was homosexual and stuff like that. And it seemed like he was very complacent with their friendship. And then when she was going through a lot of mental illnesses and stuff, she ended up, I think she jumped out the window, if I'm not mistaken. And the thing is, her parents were Jewish, and with they lived in a culture where it was like, no, what is all this? So they told their neighbor to take all of her writings and to burn it, like pretty much get rid of it and burn it. And I think there was another roommate she had in college that happened to have a notebook that she wrote. And even, well, when I spoke to Tony Trigilio, he was like, oh, well, he could have did this much sooner, but he did it. And it was like, I think, I forgot how many years he said it was, that it wasn't that many. It wasn't until a long time, but he decided, okay, we're going to publish the pieces. So that's why there's only that one book, or which is kind of rare to find. Like, I think they have it in Amazon for, I think like $90 or something, because it's just out of print kind of thing. But it's one of those things like, see, but this is what I'm saying. Stories that, like, there's probably other poets that we're never gonna know about, and that's why I want to keep doing this so we can know about them. If I don't know if that makes sense. I feel like I went randomly all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of great poets out there, and there's got to be somebody who curates them and finds them and presents them to the world. I think that's true of any art. Is you need that. You have the artist creating the art, and then you have the business end on top of it is. The people who are starting like publishing houses and presses, right. The people who are doing podcasts, who are finding these people, and I feel like you need that like layer on top of the people creating the art to kind of like bring it to the world. Yeah, I agree.
No, definitely. So, all right. So basically, I'm gonna bring this to a close. It's already a little bit past 9, and I have to start getting ready to go to sleep.
Oh yeah, me too. It's late there. Huh?
Early in the morning. What happened?
I said it's late there, huh? You're in Jersey.
Yeah, it's yeah. So it's 9:18 at night. I have to be at work by 6 because it's like truck and stuff like that, and I think I have 12 pallets or something of truck. I work at a pharmacy where it's a whole. Because I don't know if I'm allowed to say. I don't know how that stuff. I don't know if I'm allowed to say where I work exactly. But anyway, so actually, you know what? There is one more question I want to ask, and then I'll close it. Tell me a little bit about that point stint thing that you do. I think that's pretty cool.
Oh yeah, that's I don't think I have. Yeah, that's like just something I do for like exercise and for like Zen recentering myself. And yeah, I've done that maybe for like I don't know, like 10 years on and off. I've gotten back into it recently within like the last two years, like seriously, and use it as like just a form of exercise and actually as a stimulus to thought too. I think it really helps with thinking because I think one of the ways to stimulate your thinking is like to actually like get up and move around and like do things. And there's a lot of complex movements involved when you're spinning poi, and so a lot of times when I write, I'll just be spinning, freestyling, and trying to like maybe do some very difficult moves or spins or tricks, and doing that will like kind of focus me in, and then I can like think better. I find I can think better when I'm doing it. So yeah, it's a form of exercise. It's a form of thought. It looks really cool when you turn the lights out and you're spinning. And I got into it with my friends when we were in our like 20s, and yeah, now we just do it every so often. We hang out and just spin, and yeah, it's pretty fun. And
That's cool.
there's a fun spinning community or poi community on Instagram too, and so I love watching their stuff.
Oh,
Um,
really? Okay, so I gotta check this out now. See, like this is what I'm saying. See, you would have never told me that. I would have never even known that. To be honest
yeah,
with you.
yeah, it's fun.
Oh man, yeah. Oh my God. Yo, Robert, thank you so much for doing this live with me. Thank you for being a part of, I guess, history. I guess.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. I
I feel like
appreciate
this
it.
is history for me. I think I really believe that. Thank you for agreeing to do this episode with me. Just to let everybody know, I'm definitely gonna keep the live on here, but sometime before the week is over, I'm going to upload the audio onto the actual podcast so you can hear the audio as well. For those who don't know, it's on Spotify, it's on Google, it's on Apple, it's on Pandora, it's on iHeartRadio, it's on what's the other place? Amazon Music, and I believe the other place I have it on is on. I think. Oh man, I don't even know the top of my heart. On the top of my head, I believe it's. Oh, I'm gonna look at my story quick. Oh, that's sad. Okay, hold up. So it's Google, Apple, um, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora. Yeah, that's it. Oh, that was it. Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, so my podcast is available on those platforms, so you have different options to check out. So again, Robert, thank you for joining me and doing this with me. Thank you guys for showing up in this live. We'll see you next time. And yeah, so thank you, Robert. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Thanks so much for having me, man. See you later.
Yeah, no doubt, man. We gotta do this again sometime, man. For real.
Absolutely, yeah. Whatever you want. See you,
All right,
man.
no doubt. All right, later.